The stars had never seemed so cold. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Determination, watching the alien fleet position itself around Earth's moon. 47 massive vessels, each one larger than humanity's biggest space station, hung in space like metal vultures. Their hulls gleamed with strange metals that seemed to bend light around them. 3 months ago, these same ships had arrived with fanfare and celebration. The Galactic Council, they called themselves, representatives of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They had come in peace, they said, to welcome humanity into the greater cosmic community. Maria remembered the excitement that had swept across Earth. Alien contact. Real honest-to-God aliens. Not just one species, but 4 different ones working together. The Vorthans looked like walking trees made of living metal. The Zephyrians were beings of pure crystal that sang when they talked. The Nexari moved like a single creature with 1,000 bodies. And the Etherians were so beautiful they seemed to glow with inner light. For 6 weeks, everything had been wonderful. The aliens shared basic technology. Better power sources, improved medical scanners, faster computers. Human scientists worked day and night to understand these gifts. And humans learned fast. Very fast, too fast it turned out. Captain, her communications officer called out. Admiral Chen is requesting all ship commanders report to the command channel. Maria nodded and switched her screen to the fleet-wide communication. Admiral Chen's weathered face appeared, looking older than his 60 years. Behind him, she could see the lights of Luna Base, where the last diplomatic talks had taken place just hours ago. People of Earth, the Admiral began, his voice steady despite the circumstances. I'm not going to lie to you about what just happened in there. The Galactic Council has made their decision. We are being exiled from this region of space effective immediately. Maria felt her stomach drop. She had expected this, but hearing it made it real. They claim we're too dangerous, Chen continued. They say humans learn too quickly, adapt too easily. They're afraid that in 100 years we'll challenge their authority, so they've decided to remove the problem before it starts. On her tactical display, Maria could see human ships throughout the solar system, cargo vessels bringing supplies from the asteroid belt, colony ships preparing for missions to nearby star systems, military vessels like her own, trying to look threatening despite being completely outgunned. The Etherian ambassador's voice suddenly filled all communication channels. When Etherians spoke, their words seemed to come from inside your head rather than through speakers. Humans of Earth, the voice said. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. You have been judged by the Galactic Council. Your species shows dangerous traits that threaten galactic stability. You adapt too quickly to new environments. You learn new technologies too fast. You spread to worlds that others cannot survive on. Maria clenched her fists. Those had been humanity's greatest achievements. In just 50 years since developing faster-than-light travel, humans had established colonies on worlds that the aliens considered impossible to live on. Planets with crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, extreme radiation. Places where humans not only survived but thrived. Your exile begins now, the Etherian continued. You have 72 hours to gather your people and leave this region of space. Any human vessel detected within Council territory after that time will be destroyed without warning. Your species is forbidden from contact with any Council world or citizen. The transmission ended, leaving only the sound of breathing and quiet sobbing from some crew members. Admiral Chen's voice returned. All ships, this is your Admiral speaking. I won't pretend this isn't the worst day in human history, but it's not the end of our history. We've been preparing for something like this. Maria knew he was right. Even during the celebrations of first contact, military planners had been working on contingency plans. What if the aliens turned hostile? What if they decided humanity was a threat? The plans existed, but nobody had really believed they would need them. Operation Exodus is now in effect, Chen announced. All military vessels will escort our colony ships and civilian transports to the designated rendezvous points beyond the outer rim. We're going into exile, but we're going together. Over the next 3 days, Maria watched the largest evacuation in human history unfold. Transport ships packed with families, their faces pressed against viewports for one last look at Earth. Cargo vessels loaded with everything humanity could take, manufacturing equipment, genetic samples, cultural archives, and most importantly, all the alien technology they had been studying. The aliens watched but did not interfere. They seemed almost sad about what they were doing, but they never wavered in their decision. On the final day, Maria stood on the observation deck of a massive colony ship called New Horizon. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see Earth growing smaller behind them. The blue and white marble that had been humanity's home for 300,000 years was disappearing into the black. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said beside her. Maria turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez, one of the youngest admirals in Earth's fleet. At 35, Vasquez had already made her name designing the ships that allowed humans to colonize impossible worlds. "Earth?" Maria asked. "No," Vasquez said, pointing not behind them but ahead. "Our future." Maria looked forward and saw what Vasquez meant. Hundreds of human ships stretched out in formation, heading for the galaxy's edge. Colony ships, research vessels, mining platforms, and manufacturing stations. Everything humanity needed to build a new civilization. "They think they're getting rid of a problem," Vasquez continued, "but they just gave us the entire outer galaxy to work with. All those systems they consider too dangerous or worthless to colonize." Maria nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand. The aliens had exiled humanity to the worst parts of space, regions filled with unstable stars, deadly radiation, and impossible planets. But humans had already proven they could live in such places. "How long do you think it will take?" Maria asked. Vasquez smiled, and there was something cold in that smile. 50 years, maybe 100. Long enough for them to forget about us. Long enough for us to learn everything we can about them. Long enough to turn their gift of exile into our greatest advantage. As the fleet jumped into hyperspace, leaving the solar system behind forever, Maria understood that this wasn't really an exile. It was an opportunity. The Galactic Council had just handed humanity the entire outer galaxy and told them to make themselves at home. They thought they were protecting themselves from humanity's dangerous adaptability and rapid learning. They had no idea they had just given humanity's greatest strengths the perfect environment to grow. The last transmission from Council space reached the human fleet, just as they crossed into the outer rim. The Etherian ambassador's voice, as beautiful and terrifying as before. "You are forgotten. You are exiled. The galaxy has no place for your kind." Admiral Vasquez, now commanding the Exodus fleet, sent back a single reply: "Thank you." Then she ordered all communications with Council space to cease. Humanity had work to do, and they preferred to do it in silence. The stars ahead looked warmer already. 50 years had passed since the exile, and the galaxy had moved on. In the crystal spires of Zephyrian Prime, historians updated their records one final time. The entry for Homo sapiens now read simply, "Extinct. Estimated elimination date, 2390-2400. Cause, environmental factors in outer rim territories proved unsurvivable for carbon-based life forms of terrestrial origin." The Galactic Council had other concerns now: trade disputes between Vorthan colonies and Nexari hive worlds, border tensions with unexplored regions beyond their space, the eternal question of who would lead the Council when the current Etherian High Speaker stepped down. Nobody spoke of humans anymore. Why would they? The Outer Rim was a graveyard of failed expeditions and dead worlds. No sensible species would try to survive there. But in the depths of the Helix Nebula, where radiation levels would cook most living things in minutes, Admiral Elena Vasquez was very much alive. She stood on the bridge of the Ghost of Earth, watching construction crews work on humanity's latest achievement. The Nexus was nearly complete, a space station the size of a small moon, hidden inside the nebula's swirling energy storms. Its hull was made from materials that didn't officially exist: metals that adapted to radiation, ceramics that grew stronger under pressure, and something the scientists called smart matter that could reshape itself based on need. "Status report," Vasquez called out. Commander Sarah Chen, now in her 40s and one of humanity's top intelligence officers, approached with a datapad. "Manufacturing Sector 7 is operational. We're producing ships at twice the rate we planned. The new genetic modifications are working perfectly." Vasquez nodded. The genetic modifications had been necessary, not the dramatic changes that some had feared, but subtle improvements that allowed humans to thrive in environments that would kill their ancestors. Enhanced radiation resistance, improved oxygen efficiency, better calcium absorption for high-gravity worlds. "What about the Deep Void project?" Vasquez asked. Chen smiled. The first generation of Voidborn are now 25 years old. They've never breathed natural atmosphere or felt gravity stronger than .1 standard, but they can navigate hyperspace routes that would be impossible for baseline humans. Through the observation windows, Vasquez could see some of those Voidborn at work. They moved through space in suits that were more like second skins, their bodies adapted for life in the emptiness between stars. They had become something new, still human, but specialized for an environment no other species had even attempted to colonize. And our watchers? Vasquez asked. This was the question that mattered most. For 50 years, humanity had been building in secret, but they had also been watching, learning, and preparing. Chen activated a holographic display that filled the bridge. It showed a three-dimensional map of known galaxy, with thousands of tiny red dots scattered throughout Council space. Every major shipping route has at least 3 observation posts, Chen reported. Most Council members believe they're looking at asteroids or space debris. Our posts monitor all communications, track fleet movements, and map defensive positions. Vasquez studied the display. Each red dot represented a human installation that the Council didn't know existed. Mining operations disguised as dead rocks, listening posts hidden in asteroid fields, even a few research stations tucked away in the coronas of unstable stars. What about infiltration? She asked. Chen switched the display to show a different view. This time the dots were green and scattered across Council worlds themselves. We have people everywhere, she said with quiet pride. Traders who happen to look like other species with the right genetic modifications. Humans raised from birth to think and act like Vorthans or Zephyrians. Deep cover agents who've been in place for decades. It had taken 30 years to perfect the infiltration program. Humans were remarkably good at mimicry when they needed to be. With the right surgery, genetic therapy, and training, a human could pass as almost any species for short periods. For longer assignments, they used volunteers who were willing to undergo more permanent changes. Show me the Council records on humanity, Vasquez requested. The hologram shifted again, displaying official Galactic Council documents. Page after page of text, but all saying the same thing. Humans were extinct. The Outer Rim had killed them all. The threat was gone. They actually believe it, Chen said. The few times our people have been spotted, Council forces assume they're seeing survivors of some recent accident. They never imagine we're thriving. Vasquez walked to the main view screen and looked out at the nebula around them. 50 years ago, this had been considered empty space. Too dangerous for exploration, too hostile for colonization. Now it was home to 50 million humans living in dozens of hidden settlements. Ma'am, called Lieutenant Torres from the communication station, we're receiving the monthly reports from all sectors. Put it on screen, Vasquez ordered. Data flowed across the displays. Production numbers from mining operations in asteroid fields that supposedly contained nothing valuable. Population reports from colonies on worlds the Council had marked as uninhabitable. Military strength assessments from fleets that officially didn't exist. The numbers were staggering. In 50 years of exile, humanity had not only survived but grown. They now controlled more territory than any single Council member species. They had developed technology that was decades ahead of anything in Council space, and they had done it all in regions that the galaxy's major powers considered worthless. There's something else, Chen said quietly. Our deep infiltration agents report that the Council is facing new problems. Piracy in the shipping lanes, communications failures in remote systems, equipment malfunctions on military bases. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Malfunctions? The kind that happen when someone with very advanced technology wants to test defensive systems without being detected, Chen explained. It was all part of the plan. For the past 10 years, human special operations teams had been conducting what they called intelligence gathering exercises throughout Council space. They would sneak onto military bases, copy defensive plans, plant listening devices, and occasionally sabotage equipment just to see how the Council would respond. The Council assumed they were dealing with criminal activity or natural equipment failures. They never suspected that a supposedly extinct species was testing their defenses. Are we ready? Vasquez asked. Chen understood the question. After 50 years of preparation, the human leadership was debating whether it was time to reveal themselves to the galaxy. They had the strength to defend themselves now. They had the technology to match or exceed anything the Council possessed. Most importantly, They had intelligence networks that knew the Council's capabilities better than the Council did. Almost, Chen replied. Dr. Nakamura's team believes they'll have the final technical breakthrough within the year. After that, we'll have advantages the Council can't match even if they work together. Vasquez nodded. Dr. Kenji Nakamura, now in his 80s but still brilliant, had been working on humanity's ultimate ace in the hole, technology that would make them functionally undetectable until they chose to reveal themselves. What does Admiral Chen think? Vasquez asked, referring to Sarah's father, who now commanded the Deep Strike Fleet. He says we should wait 5 more years. Let the Council get even more complacent. Let our infiltration networks get deeper. Let our manufacturing capacity get stronger. Vasquez considered this. Admiral Chen had been right about almost everything over the past 50 years. His caution had kept humanity hidden while they built their strength. And what do you think? She asked. Sarah Chen looked out at the nebula, where human ships moved through radiation storms that would cripple Council vessels. She thought about the Void-born crews who could navigate routes no other species could use. She considered the hidden bases scattered throughout the galaxy's most hostile regions. I think they forgot about us a long time ago, she said. They have no idea what we've become. Vasquez smiled. Then we continue to build. When we're ready, when we're absolutely certain we can protect ourselves and our people, then we'll remind the galaxy that humanity is still here. Through the viewports, the Helix Nebula swirled with colors that would blind most species. But human eyes, adapted for environments their creators never imagined, saw only beauty. The galaxy thought humanity was dead. Soon they would learn just how wrong they had been. Captain Zix 9944 had been exploring the Badlands for 3 months, and he was getting tired of finding nothing. The Badlands were a region of space that every sensible Zephyrian avoided. Gravitational anomalies that could crush a ship without warning. Subspace storms that scrambled navigation systems. Radiation pockets that would kill most carbon-based life forms in hours. The only reason his crystal-hulled vessel could survive here was because Zephyrians were naturally resistant to most forms of energy. But the Galactic Council's Science Division had insisted on a survey mission. They wanted to know if the Badlands contained anything useful before officially marking the region as permanently off-limits. So far, all Zix 9944 had found were dead rocks and empty space. That's why the signal surprised him so much. Captain, his sensor operator chimed, the musical tones of Zephyrian speech filling the bridge. I'm detecting artificial materials bearing 047 Mark 12. Zix 9944's crystalline body shifted to face the display screen. There, barely visible against the cosmic background, was definitely a ship. It looked crude compared to Zephyrian vessels. Metal plates welded together, primitive thruster arrays, and what appeared to be jury-rigged life support systems. What species? He asked. The sensor operator sang a few notes of uncertainty. The hull configuration appears to be human, Captain. That was impossible. Humans had been extinct for over 50 years. Everyone knew the story. Exiled to the Outer Rim, they had died out within a decade when their primitive technology couldn't handle the harsh environment. But the ship was definitely there, and it was definitely not Zephyrian, Vorthan, Nixari, or Etherian in design. Are there life signs? 69944 asked. Yes, Captain. Weak but stable. Carbon-based. The readings match archived data on human biology. Zix 9944 considered his options. Council regulations were clear about contact with unknown vessels, but this situation wasn't covered in the manual. If humans had somehow survived their exile, it would be the scientific discovery of the century. Move us to intercept, he ordered, but keep weapons ready and shields up. 20 minutes later, the two ships hung in space 50 meters apart. The human vessel looked even more pathetic up close. Hull plates that had been repaired and re-repaired, engine exhausts that glowed with barely controlled energy, and sensor arrays that looked like they had been cobbled together from spare parts. This is Captain Zix 9944 of the Zephyrian exploration vessel Crystal Song, he broadcast. Please identify yourself. The response came after a long delay. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human salvage vessel Lucky Break. Thank the stars, we thought we were going to die out here. The voice sounded human. The right pitch range, the right vocal patterns. And the name matched archived records of human naming conventions. Captain Chen, our records indicate that your species was declared extinct approximately 50 years ago. How is it that you are here? Another long pause. When the human spoke again, her voice carried what the translation systems identified as embarrassment and exhaustion. Not all of us died, Captain. Small groups of survivors have been making do, living on salvage, staying mobile, trying to avoid the dangerous areas. It's been hard. 69944 felt something like sympathy. His species had once faced extinction from natural disasters, and they remembered the desperation of those times. Captain Chen, I am conducting a scientific survey of this region. Perhaps we could meet in person. My medical officer might be able to assist with any health issues your people are experiencing. That would be wonderful, Captain. We could use medical supplies, and if you have any spare food, we could trade salvage information. We've mapped safe routes through parts of the Badlands that your people might find useful. An hour later, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the Crystal Song's airlock. She looked exactly like the archived images of humans, bipedal, carbon-based, with the distinctive hair and skin of her species. Her clothing was patched and worn, and she carried herself like someone who had spent years living on the edge of survival. But there was something in her eyes that Zix9944 found puzzling. Humans were supposed to be primitive compared to council species, but this woman looked at his advanced technology with the gaze of someone who understood it, not someone who was overwhelmed by it. Captain Chen, Zix9944 said through his translation device, I must ask how many humans are left. Sarah looked down at her hands. A few thousand, maybe, scattered across a dozen ships. We try to stay in contact, but communications are dangerous. The Council made it clear that any human presence would be met with immediate destruction. The Council believed your people had all perished. Most of us did, Sarah replied quietly. The first 10 years were terrible. Ships breaking down in the middle of nowhere. Colonies failing on worlds that seemed habitable but had hidden dangers. Families separated and never finding each other again. Zix9944's crystal heart resonated with sympathy frequencies, and yet you survived. Sarah smiled, and for a moment her exhausted expression brightened. Humans are stubborn, Captain. We don't give up easily. When our ships broke down, we learned to fix them with whatever we could find. When the worlds we tried to colonize turned hostile, we adapted. When our food ran out, we found new sources. Over the next few hours, Sarah shared stories of human survival that fascinated Zix9944. Humans who had learned to extract nutrients from asteroid minerals. Ships that had been rebuilt so many times that almost no original parts remained. Navigation techniques that used gravitational anomalies as reference points instead of avoiding them. You've become quite resourceful, Zix9944 observed. We've had to be, Sarah replied. When you're forgotten by the galaxy, you learn to make do with what you have. As they talked, Sarah's eyes were constantly moving, taking in details of the Zephyrian ship. She asked innocent questions about navigation systems, power generation, and communication arrays. To Zix9944, she seemed like a primitive being trying to understand advanced technology. He had no idea that Sarah Chen was actually one of humanity's top intelligence officers, and that every innocent question was designed to extract specific information about Zephyrian capabilities. Captain Chen, Zix9944 said as their meeting was drawing to a close, I feel obligated to inform you that this encounter must be reported to the Galactic Council. The discovery that humans still exist is significant. Sarah's expression became worried. Captain, please. If the Council learns we're still alive, they'll send ships to finish what they started 50 years ago. We're not a threat to anyone. We just want to survive in peace. Zix9944's crystals shifted to colors that indicated internal conflict. I understand your concern. Perhaps this report could be delayed until I complete my survey mission. That might give you time to move your people to safer locations. Thank you, Captain. That's very kind. As Sarah prepared to return to her ship, she handed Zix9944 a data crystal containing navigation information for safe routes through the Badlands. This is everything we've learned about traveling in this region, she said. Consider it payment for your kindness. After the human ship had disappeared into a subspace storm, Zix9944 examined the data crystal. The information was incredibly detailed. Gravitational maps, safe hyperspace entry points, locations of valuable mineral, deposits that previous surveys had missed. It was exactly the kind of intelligence that would make a junior exploration captain look like a genius to his superiors. What Zix-9944 didn't know was that the crystal also contained nanoscale devices that would integrate themselves into his ship's computer systems. Within days, these devices would have mapped every piece of Zephyrian technology, decoded their communication protocols, and identified the locations of every major Zephyrian military installation. The crystal also contained a complete record of Zix-9944's conversation with Sarah, along with detailed scans of his ship and crew. This information would be transmitted to human intelligence networks across the galaxy, where analysts would use it to update their understanding of current Council capabilities. When Zix-9944 filed his report 6 weeks later, it was buried in routine paperwork. The encounter with surviving humans was noted as an interesting scientific curiosity and forwarded to the appropriate research division, where it would gather digital dust for months before anyone important read it. But by then, it was far too late. The seeds of human intelligence gathering had been planted throughout Council space. Every communication, every military movement, every scientific breakthrough would now be monitored by a species that the galaxy thought was extinct. In the depths of the Helix Nebula, Admiral Elena Vasquez read Sarah Chen's mission report with satisfaction. "First contact accomplished," she murmured. "Let the real work begin." Ambassador Theron Kavox was having the worst day of his 300-year career. First, pirates had hit another Vorthan supply convoy, stealing cargo with technology that shouldn't exist. Then the Nexari had reported more communication failures across their hive networks. Something was jamming their telepathic connections, but every investigation found nothing. And now, his personal communication system was displaying an impossible message. Priority transmission, human diplomatic course. The header read, "Humans didn't have a diplomatic corps." Humans were extinct. Everyone knew that. Theron's bark-like skin shifted to darker shades as he activated his office's highest security protocols. The message was encrypted with codes that were more advanced than anything in Council databases. Somehow, his systems had been able to decode it automatically, which meant the senders understood Vorthan technology better than the Vorthans did. The message itself was brief. Ambassador Kavox, humanity requests a private meeting to discuss matters of mutual interest. We have information regarding recent unusual activities in Council space. A representative will contact you through secure channels within 72 hours. Attached to the message was a data package that made Theron's wooden heart skip several beats. Detailed schematics of his office building's security systems, complete records of every conversation he'd had with other Council members in the past month. Star charts showing the exact locations of supposedly secret Vorthon military bases, and surveillance footage of the pirate attack on the supply convoy. Footage taken from an angle that should have been impossible, unless someone had been watching. From inside the convoy itself, the final attachment was the most disturbing. A three-dimensional map of Council space showing thousands of red dots scattered throughout every major system. Each dot was labeled with coordinates and the words human installation. Theron stared at the map for nearly an hour. If it was accurate, then humans weren't extinct at all. They were everywhere. 3 days later, a figure in a hooded cloak approached Theron's private residence on Vorthak Prime. The Vorthan homeworld was supposed to be one of the most secure planets in the galaxy, with orbital defenses and security systems that could detect any unauthorized visitor. But somehow, this person had gotten past everything. Ambassador Kavox. The voice was definitely human. The right pitch, the right accent patterns that matched archived recordings. "You're supposed to be extinct," Theron replied, his translator trying to convey his mixture of fear and fascination. The figure lowered her hood, revealing a middle-aged human woman with graying hair and intelligent eyes. "Admiral Elena Vasquez, representing the interests of humanity in exile. We need to talk." Theron led her to his private study, a room shielded against every form of electronic surveillance known to Vorthan science. He was reasonably certain their conversation would remain private. "How many of you are there?" he asked. "More than you think." "Fewer than you fear," Vasquez replied with a slight smile. "The exact number isn't important. What matters is that we've been watching the galaxy for 50 years, and we've learned some interesting things." She activated a small device that projected a hologram into the air. The image showed the recent pirate attack on the Vorthon convoy. but from multiple angles and with far more detail than any official investigation had revealed. "The pirates who hit your convoy," Vasquez said. "They're using technology based on stolen council designs, but improved beyond your current capabilities. Someone has been giving criminal organizations access to weapons that make them nearly unstoppable." Theron's bark shifted to alarmed brown patterns. "Who? We're not sure yet, but we have theories." The hologram changed to show star charts with movement patterns highlighted in different colors. "Someone with access to high-level military information has been coordinating these attacks. Someone who knows your convoy schedules, your security protocols, your defensive capabilities. You're suggesting there's a traitor among the council leadership." Vasquez shrugged. "We're suggesting there's someone playing a very dangerous game, and they're using the chaos they're creating to position themselves for something bigger." The hologram shifted again, showing the communication failures that had been plaguing the Nexari, but instead of random equipment malfunctions, the pattern revealed a deliberate sequence of attacks designed to isolate different hive clusters from each other. "The Nexari problems aren't accidents either," Vasquez continued. "Someone is testing their response times, mapping their communication networks, and identifying weak points in their collective consciousness." Theron felt a chill that had nothing to do with his office temperature. "What do you want?" "Information sharing," Vasquez said simply. "Humanity has been forgotten by the galaxy for 50 years. That's given us advantages that no one expects. We can go places other species can't survive. We can hide in regions that council ships can't enter, and most importantly, we can watch without being seen. In exchange for what?" Vasquez smiled, and there was something predatory in that expression. "Protection. Whoever is orchestrating these attacks, they're building toward something. When they make their move, the council is going to need allies who can operate in the shadows." The hologram changed once more, showing a detailed analysis of the strange equipment failures that had been reported across Etherian worlds. The pattern was subtle but unmistakable. Someone was testing Etherian psychic defenses, probing for weaknesses in their mental abilities. "All 4 council species are being systematically studied and tested," Vasquez said. "Your military capabilities, your communication systems, your special abilities, your response patterns. Someone is preparing for war, Ambassador, and they're doing it very carefully." Theron's wooden features creaked as he considered the implications. "Why should I trust you? 50 years ago, the Council exiled your species because we considered you dangerous." "Because 50 years ago, you were right," Vasquez replied without hesitation. "We were dangerous. We learned too fast, adapted too quickly, spread to places you couldn't control. But you know what 50 years of exile taught us?" "What?" "Patience." Vasquez's smile became almost gentle. "We could have revealed ourselves years ago. We could have demanded recognition or revenge or territory. Instead, we waited. We watched. We learned. And now, when the galaxy faces a threat that could destroy everything the Council has built, we're offering to help." The hologram displayed a final image, a massive space station hidden inside what appeared to be an ordinary asteroid. The technology visible in the structure was clearly beyond anything the Council possessed. "This is one of our smaller installations," Vasquez said. "We have dozens of facilities like this throughout the galaxy, all hidden in places you consider uninhabitable or worthless. When your unknown enemy makes their move, they'll find themselves fighting not just the Council, but an ally they never knew existed." Theron studied the image carefully. The implications were staggering. If humans had been building installations like this for 50 years, they might actually be more powerful than any individual Council species. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked. "A partnership," Vasquez replied. "Humanity remains officially extinct to the general galaxy, but we establish a secret intelligence sharing agreement with select Council leadership. We provide you with information about threats your regular security forces can't detect. You provide us with political intelligence and help us coordinate responses to major dangers. And if I refuse?" Vasquez's expression didn't change. "Then you continue dealing with pirates who have impossible technology, communication failures that make no sense, and equipment malfunctions that follow suspicious patterns. Eventually, your unknown enemy will be ready to make their real move and the Council will face it alone." She stood to leave, then paused. "Oh, an ambassador? Your office security was compromised about 6 months ago. Someone's been monitoring your private communications. You might want to have your technical staff check for surveillance devices that don't appear in any of your databases." Theron's bark went completely white with shock. His office was supposed to be impenetrable. How do you know that? Because we've been monitoring the people who are monitoring you, Vasquez said. Like I said, we've learned patience, and we've learned to watch. After she left, Theron sat alone in his study for hours. The implications of the conversation were enormous. Humans weren't extinct, they were everywhere. They had technology that exceeded Council capabilities. They had been watching the galaxy for 50 years without being detected. Most disturbing of all, they were offering to help protect the Council from an enemy that Theron was now certain existed. He activated his most secure communication system and sent an encrypted message to the 3 other Council leaders. The message was brief. We need to meet, immediately. The galaxy is not what we thought it was. In space stations hidden throughout the galaxy's most hostile regions, human intelligence officers received reports that the first phase of Operation Recognition had begun. The Council was starting to understand that they were not alone, and that the ally they had exiled 50 years ago might be the key to their survival. Admiral Vasquez, returning to the Helix Nebula aboard a ship that could outrun anything in Council space, allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. The great Council chambers of Vorthak Prime had not seen such tension in 3 centuries. All 4 species were represented at the emergency session. Vorthan delegates stood like living trees, their bark skin shifting through worried colors. Zephyrian representatives chimed in harmonious but anxious musical tones. The Nexari collective whispered among themselves with thousands of voices speaking as one, and the Etherian high speaker glowed with light that pulsed with barely controlled emotion. Ambassador Theron Kavak stood at the center podium, knowing that what he was about to reveal would change the galaxy forever. Honored colleagues, he began, his translator carrying the weight of his words to every species present. What I am about to tell you will challenge everything we believed about our galaxy's recent history. The massive doors at the chamber's entrance suddenly opened, though no one had authorized entry. Every security system should have prevented this, but somehow the locks had simply stopped working. A human woman walked into the chamber. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Nexari voices rose in alarm. Zephyrian song turned discordant. Etherian light flared with surprise and fear. Several Vorthon delegates actually backed away, their ancient memories of the exile still fresh. But the woman who entered was not the primitive survivor that some Council members might have expected. Admiral Elena Vasquez wore a uniform that seemed to shift and adapt to the light around it. Her equipment was clearly advanced beyond current Council technology, and she moved with the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where she was. Honored Council, she said, her voice carrying clearly throughout the massive chamber without any visible amplification device. I am Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Stellar Defense Force. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but we felt it was time for a proper introduction. The Etherian High Speaker, Luminous Prime, was the first to recover from shock. When Etherians spoke, their words seemed to come from inside listeners' minds rather than through the air. Impossible, the mental voice said. Humanity was exiled to the Outer Rim 57 years ago. The Outer Rim is uninhabitable. Your species is extinct. Vasquez smiled, and there was something almost gentle in that smile. Honored Luminous Prime, with respect, you are correct about 2 of those statements. We were indeed exiled 57 years ago, and you do indeed consider the Outer Rim uninhabitable. She activated a device on her wrist, and the chamber filled with a 3-dimensional hologram that showed the galaxy from a perspective no Council member had ever seen. The familiar territories of the Council species were there, but they now appeared as small islands surrounded by a vast network of interconnected systems. Each connection point glowed with soft light, indicating active human settlements, manufacturing centers, and defensive installations. What you see, Vasquez explained, is the galaxy as it actually exists today. Council space, the regions you control and consider civilized, represent approximately 37% of inhabited galactic territory. The remaining 63% has been quietly colonized by humanity over the past 5 decades. The silence in the chamber was deafening. The Nexari collective spoke first, their thousands of voices creating an eerie harmony. How is this possible? Our exploration fleets have surveyed the regions beyond our borders. They found nothing but dead systems and hostile environments. Honored collective, Vasquez replied. Your exploration fleets were looking for planets and environments that could support your species. You never looked for evidence of a species that could adapt to hostile environments rather than terraforming them to suit your needs. The hologram zoomed in on several systems that Council records marked as uninhabitable due to extreme radiation. But the display showed thriving human colonies, their populations in the millions. We learned something during our exile, Vasquez continued. Instead of changing hostile worlds to suit us, we changed ourselves to suit hostile worlds. Radiation that would kill most carbon-based life forms is merely an inconvenience to humans who have been genetically adapted for high radiation environments. Gravity that would crush Zephyrian crystal structures is comfortable for humans whose bones have been enhanced with metallic composites. She gestured, and the hologram showed human ships moving through regions of space that Council vessels couldn't enter. Nebulae filled with energy storms, the coronas of unstable stars, asteroid fields so dense that navigation seemed impossible. Every region you considered too dangerous to explore became a highway for human expansion. Every world you marked as unsurvivable became a potential colony. Every system you ignored became a military base or manufacturing center. The Vorthan leader, ancient grove keeper, spoke in the deep, slow tones of his species. If this is true, then for 57 years you have been surrounding us, watching us. Why reveal yourselves now? Vasquez's expression became serious. Because the galaxy faces a threat that none of us can handle alone. Someone has been systematically testing your defenses, mapping your capabilities, and preparing for a large-scale conflict. The pirate attacks, communication failures, and equipment malfunctions that have been plaguing Council space, and they're not random events. The hologram changed to show attack patterns, data flows, and strategic analyses that painted a disturbing picture of coordinated intelligence gathering. Someone with access to high-level Council information has been feeding data to hostile forces, she continued. Someone who knows your convoy schedules, your communication protocols, your military capabilities. And they've been preparing for something big. Luminous Prime's glow intensified with what observers recognized as concern. You claim to have been monitoring our space for decades. Who is responsible for these attacks? Vasquez paused, knowing that her next words would shock the Council even more than her presence had. Elements within the Void Hunters. The reaction was immediate and explosive. The Void Hunters were a legend, an ancient species that had supposedly vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago, leaving behind only ruins and warnings about dangers from outside normal space. Impossible, Grovekeeper said. The Void Hunters are extinct. They have been gone longer than any of our species have existed. Not extinct, Vasquez corrected. Hidden, waiting, and very, very patient. The hologram now showed deep space regions that even human scouts had difficulty reaching. Ancient structures that clearly weren't built by any known species. And energy signatures that matched technology found in Void Hunter ruins. 3 years ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected artificial signals from regions that should contain nothing but empty space. When we investigated, we found installations that have been operational for millennia. The Void Hunters never left the galaxy. They simply retreated to regions so hostile that no other species would ever look for them. The Nexari Collective's voices rose in harmonious alarm. If the Void Hunters have returned, then every species in the galaxy is in danger. Which is why we're revealing ourselves, Vasquez said. 57 years ago, you exiled humanity because you considered us too dangerous and unpredictable to coexist with. Today, I'm here to suggest that those same qualities might be exactly what the galaxy needs to survive. She gestured again, and the hologram showed human military installations positioned throughout the galaxy's most inaccessible regions. Fleet bases hidden in nebulae, manufacturing centers built inside asteroid fields, research stations tucked away in the coronas of dying stars. Humanity spent 57 years learning to survive in places where no other species can operate. We developed technology that functions in extreme environments. We adapted our biology to thrive in conditions that would kill any other known life form. And most importantly, we learned to be patient. The display showed comparative military analyses. Human forces were now roughly equal to the combined military strength of all 4 Council species. We're not asking to rejoin galactic civilization as it was, Vasquez said. We're proposing something new. A partnership where humanity serves as the galaxy's First line of defense against threats that emerge from the regions of space that only we can survive. Grove Keeper's bark shifted to colors that indicated deep thought. What exactly are you proposing? The formation of the Galactic Defense Federation. Council species would maintain control of their traditional territories and continue their existing governments. But humanity would be recognized as the guardians of the frontier, the hostile regions that surround and protect civilized space. The hologram showed how this arrangement would work. Council space, protected by human installations that could detect and intercept threats before they reached inhabited worlds. Trade routes secured by human patrol fleets that could operate in dangerous regions. Research stations studying phenomena that other species couldn't safely approach. In exchange for this protection, Vasquez continued, humanity asks only for recognition and the right to exist. We're not seeking territory within council space. We're not demanding reparations for our exile. We simply want to be part of the galaxy again. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The species that had been exiled for being too dangerous had spent 57 years becoming indispensable. Luminous Prime spoke first. How do we know you can be trusted?